You ever take a wrong turn that changes your life? I'm not talking about metaphorical ones, like marrying the wrong guy or choosing the wrong major. I mean a literal wrong turn. A single swerve on the highway that takes you somewhere you were never meant to go. That happened to me in the spring of 2021. Before we get into the story, I'm Devin, and this is Porch Lore. Please be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Enjoy the story. This is Porch Lore. And I'm your host, Devin. This is the tale of the wrong turn outside Nocoma. I'd been on the road almost 9 hours, hauling antique furniture from an estate auction in Kansas down to a collector in Fort Worth. I was alone. My business partner Miranda had opted to stay behind to finish up paperwork. Honestly, I didn't mind. I like driving. It clears my head. Or at least it used to. The GPS was set for the fastest route, but right around dusk, the app lit up with a red warning. Wreck on I-35, 3-hour delay. I groaned, hit reroute, and took the suggested exit towards a back road near Nocoma, Texas. 2-lane blacktop, no traffic, lined with fence posts and the kind of wide open ranch land that makes you feel like you're on the edge of the world. At first, I was grateful. The detour was beautiful and peaceful, wide open spaces. I passed a couple rusted windmills and what looked like a long abandoned filling station. The road curved through some low hills, and I didn't see another car for 45 minutes. Then the pavement turned to gravel. I slowed down, but the GPS still insisted this was the route. It said I was only 25 minutes from the highway. So I kept going, crunching along a narrow stretch of road hemmed by thick mesquite trees and barbed wire. Then the gravel turned to dirt. Not a smooth, well-used farm road. No, this was rutted, sun-baked red clay, with patches of standing water from a recent storm. I probably should have turned around, but my van had good clearance and I'd driven worse in Mississippi. So I told myself it was fine. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true on that trip. About 5 miles in, I saw a sign, and in faded white paint, hanging sideways on one chain, read, Reverend's Hollow, 1 mile. It looked like it had been there for 50 years or maybe longer. I paused, took a picture of it for Miranda. She loves old school Americana. The trees got thicker after that, and the light disappeared faster than it should have. 1 minute it was that golden hour glow through the windshield, and the next it was dim gray, like someone had turned down a switch on the sun. So I flipped on my headlights. About a minute later, my cell signal vanished. Not low, not weak, just gone. SOS signal at the top. I remember laughing, nervous, stupid laughter. I hit the brakes, pulled over, and looked around. The woods were close now. Thick trunks, dead leaves, no wind and no birdsong. It just felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Still no bars on my phone. I tapped on the GPS again, blank screen, map loading error. I wasn't lost, technically. The road was still there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed into somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I drove another half mile, and that's when I saw the buildings, if you could call them that. They were clustered in a clearing up ahead, maybe 4 or 5 of them, all made of gray, weather-worn wood. No power lines, no cars, no movement. It looked like a ghost town. And not the charming tourist kind, just the forgotten kind, the kind that isn't on any map. But then I noticed something strange. There were no roofs. All the buildings were missing their roofs. Just hollow shells with sagging walls leaning into each other, like they were trying to collapse in secret. And there were symbols scorched into the wood. Charred circles, crude stick figures, and runes I didn't recognize. One looked like an upside-down triangle with an eye in the middle of it. I drove past slowly, watching with my windows up. Then I saw the first shadow figure. It was standing in the doorway of what used to be a church. At least, I think it was a church. The pointed arch was still visible, and there was a cross cracked in half nailed to the wall. The figure was tall, too tall for any human I've ever seen, and thin, but not in a sickly way, in an unnatural way, like it had been stretched out. Limbs too long, neck too straight. I couldn't make out the face. It was turned slightly, like it was watching me from the corner of its eye. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, and I didn't stop until I was well past the clearing. I glanced in my rearview mirror and nearly drove off the road. There were more of them. Not people, more shadow figures. Inhuman, long, creepy shapes, all standing in a loose line at the edge of the woods, watching the road. I don't remember much of the next few minutes, just panic. Just the sound of my own breath and the gravel hitting the undercarriage of my car. The dirt road twisted once more, and then, I swear to God, it ended. No warning signs, no cul-de-sac, no turnaround, just a dead end. I slammed the brakes. The van skidded sideways and stopped inches from a ditch. Now I was shaking. My hands were slick on the wheel and my chest was tight. I threw it in reverse and spun around. And that's when I saw the girl. She was standing in the middle of the road, wearing a white cotton dress, dirty at the hem. Long dark hair, bare feet, and her head was tilted just a little, and her arms were stiff at her sides. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. So I honked at her, and nothing. I rolled the window down a crack and told her I needed to get through. I was so scared, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She didn't speak. She just pointed behind me. I didn't look. I couldn't bear to. I backed the van into a narrow path I hadn't seen before. A trail barely wide enough for a lawnmower, let alone a Ford Transit. But it was that or try to pass through her. The branches slapped against the sides, and I could hear them scratching the paint. The van creaked, but I kept going. 10 minutes later, I was back on gravel and then finally pavement. Then, somehow miraculously, I was back at the main road. Then, just like magic, my GPS blinked back to life like nothing had ever happened. The map refreshed and the highway was only 10 minutes ahead now. When I got to the next gas station, I sat in the parking lot with the engine running and just sobbed into the steering wheel. I didn't even notice the scratches until I stopped for gas hours later. They ran all along the side panels, deep, ragged gouges in the metal. There's no way these were from the branches that I drove through. They looked like claw marks, 3 at a time, parallel, too wide for any animal I know. I never told Miranda the full story, just said that the route was hell and I hit some brush. But I did Google that name, Reverend's Hollow, and found exactly one article from 1978. A small-town paper out of Montague County ran a blurb about an isolated religious sect that vanished after a fire. The cult had built a tiny compound in the woods near Nocoma and refused all contact with the outside world. The locals called them the Hollow Ones, and it was said they worshipped something that lived beneath the trees. The fire ended up burning down the entire compound, but somehow no bodies were ever recovered. No remains, no bones. Just a message scratched into a scorched wall of the chapel. We are not gone. We're just waiting. And at the very bottom of the article, there was a photograph, black and white and blurry. It showed 5 figures standing in the woods. One of them looked like a tall man in a preacher's coat. Another was a small girl in a white dress. And the one in the center, towering over the rest, had no face. Just smooth, pale skin and arms that reached past its knees. I never told anyone what happened to me on that trip. And I've never mentioned Reverend's Hollow. I've asked around, and nobody's ever heard of Reverend's Hollow. I never told anybody what I saw, but I also never drove through that area again. I'm Devin, and thanks for joining me, Porch Pals. For more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and help me reach 1,000 subscribers. And remember, there's always room for one more on the porch.